Carl Jung fanatic jump on the other night. He had a meltdown, and he said, "Oh, you're crazy." Well, I got the Cambridge Companion to Western Mysticism and Esotericism, and there just happened to be an entire chapter on Carl Jung and his whole worldview. And it's not that long; it's about 7 pages, but it says that basically Carl Jung owed everything that he taught to Basilides, the Gnostic, and the Alexandrian Gnostic tradition, which is the very thing that I said in the debate that the guy took issue with. And then to relate it to the Jordan Peterson Tate sphere, there's a fascinating a paragraph here that says that Carl Jung, being a Protestant, raised Protestant, spoke of the extraordinary importance of dogma and ritual, which he validates as a method of spiritual hygiene. The life of Christ for him is not a one-time historical occurrence. Rather, for Carl Jung, who is familiar with the mysticism of Meister Eckhart and Jacob Boehme, the life of Christ happens to be always and everywhere a Christian archetype, interwoven with what it means to be a human. Naturally, this is not meant in any sectarian way. In fact, Carl Jung wished to demonstrate and deconstruct all traditions and to have them historically fixed and rigid in order to reveal their experiential value. In other words, he relativizes it, and it goes on to say that Jung was critiqued because this idea was criticized for being a psychologizing of religion. He responded by saying that when I talk about God, I don't mean any theological concept, but a psychical image, a phenomenon merely in the human psyche. Thus, Carl Jung refrained from making any theological pronouncements. And then it goes on to talk about Carl Jung's view was, in fact, Christ consciousness. So a lot of the influencers who supposedly converted are still talking about Christ consciousness. And the problem with that is, well, what does that mean? Well, it sounds like what Carl Jung talked about. Of course, we have later figures at the United Nations who became promoters of Christ consciousness. And the problem is that it's such a vague idea that when we really drill into it, and of course Jordan Peterson himself says that he owes a gigantic portion of his ideological thought to Carl Jung. He says that he's read the entire collected works of Jung. We can see that it's the same structure here. It's the idea is that God is just an idea that kind of functions as like a self-help vehicle. But that's exactly what Andrew Tate says about God too. If you listen to Tate's talks, he'll say, God is really just this sort of idea that you project that becomes a thing for you to, engage in self-help. But of course, again, that's just not what God is. So